Okay, hello. So I'm going to do a review on the book Resilience by Eric Greitins, or Greitins, however you pronounce it. He's an ex-Navy SEAL. He's now a politician, or he was recently. I'm not sure if he still is now. But I did a review on this book the other day, put it on YouTube. I wasn't very happy with it. It's the first time I've done that with all my videos. The reason I wasn't happy with it is I just don't think it did justice to the book. I think this book is such a good personal development book. And personal development is what I do on this channel. I read lots of different books. I don't just read personal development, but my main kind of what I concentrate mainly on is non-fiction, personal development type of books. And this one, Resilience by Eric Greitins, is one of the best ones I've read, actually. So last year I got through about 90 books. A lot of those were listened to on Audible, but I suppose half and half were read, half were listened to. I just find I have a lot more time to listen to books. I'm driving quite a lot. I'm doing things where I'm able to listen at the same time. So I just find and I also really enjoy listening to books as well. If you've got a good narrator and it's a good enough story, then I really enjoy it. So Audible is really, really good. I've found absolutely fantastic. There are other ones you can use, but I personally found Audible to be fantastic and pretty good value as well. This book, Resilience by Eric Greitins. He is an ex-Navy SEAL, like I say. He puts quite an interesting edge on the idea of resilience. Resilience is something that gets talked about a lot nowadays. It's very popular in schools with young people. It's very popular around kind of mental health and trying to get to the bottom of why people are getting mentally unwell and depressed and things like that. It's obviously really important. For people who want to be successful, entrepreneurs and business people, the sort of people who are interested in reading these kind of books quite a lot of the time, like myself, I'm kind of on my own sort of personal development journey. I'm trying to improve myself. Resilience is really important. It's something that we need, something that we need to work on. And in this book, he basically is writing a series of letters to his friend who he served with in the SEALs. He also grew up with him as well, so he knows him pretty well. Describes him as a real tough guy. He was really good as a SEAL, but what happens is he left. He went back home and tried a few different things to find sort of meaning in his life. Started a business which didn't really work, and he's got to a stage where he's drinking too much and he's just not particularly loving life very much. And Eric's kind of saying that it's really sad to see this happen to him because he's got so much respect for him and understands how good a bloke he is and how much he could actually contribute if he took the right approach. So it's a series of letters to him. They're the sort of chapter titles, which makes it nice as well. And it's just giving him different bits of advice, trying to talk to him, trying to explain to him how important it is to look for meaning, how important it is to be there for your family, for your community. All the stuff that we've kind of, if you've read this sort of stuff before, it's nothing massively new, but it's just the way he does it. And he uses stories from the SEALs, which I always find really interesting. I think that fascinates me, like kind of the BUDS training and the fact that they're put through so much psychologically. Like, forget the physical side of it. Like, the physical side of it is hard. You can either manage the physical side of it or you can't. You're either fit enough or you're not. But it's the mental side of it that I find fascinating. Are you strong enough mentally to put up with that amount of crap for that much time? And if you are, then you've got a chance of getting through. So it's really interesting. And I suppose for people, on that note, for people who maybe have mental health issues, then it's maybe not as useful, because obviously if you're mentally unwell, then quite often you do need medication. You need other things as well, but if you're particularly depressed, then generally medication is the first thing, because the worst thing that can happen is that someone becomes suicidal, and you can't be sort of telling someone to toughen up if they're in that situation. But outside of that, if you're just someone who is kind of maybe struggling a little bit and you want a bit of a kick up the ass and you want to improve yourself, then this book is absolutely superb. I won't give you the chapter titles, but it's like I say, it's a series of letters. He draws on the BUDS and the SEALs training, which makes it really interesting. He brings in sort of Greek mythology as well, which I really like. He talks about the Stoics and stuff as well, their approach to things, which is all really relevant. Stoicism, really fantastic. He talks about the fact that in life you need to meet hardship along the way if you're going to find meaning, if you're going to be happy, if you're going to achieve your dreams. You can't expect to sort of go through life easily and achieve anything. Anything worth achieving is going to be difficult, basically. So it's about that struggle. And I think it was Einstein who said something along the lines of, I won't quote him exactly, but he said something along the lines of, that life is basically suffering, to get to your goals. I'll edit that in afterwards because that's pretty far from what he said, but it's about struggling through life. It's about having that struggle and meeting that hardship. Obviously your struggles are your own, we're all individuals, but other people have generally experienced them before. When you think of how many millions of years we've been around, evolving, and the difficulties people have gone through before, we're not alone. People have gone through these difficulties before, and people have written about it and studied it, so there's information there that can help us with that. So it's about realising you're not completely on your own. Our egos can kind of lead us to believe that we're on our own a lot of the time and that we're so special, but actually we need to think in a kind of more, I suppose, community way, sociably, sort of, coming together. We're not completely on our own, we're not islands. So I suppose the big message is that he's basically saying that you can't flourish in life without purpose. You can survive, you can get by, but if you don't have purpose and something that you're really struggling for, something that's meaningful to you, then you're not going to flourish. You're not going to push yourself. You're not going to get uncomfortable. You're not going to grow. And obviously, it's this idea that growth is happiness. If we're growing and developing, then we're generally happy. If we're staying still and we're feeling stale and unchallenged, then we become unhappy. We become depressed. But it's about combining that with being with other people as well, learning from other people. He talks a lot about humility as well, which I think is really important, which is something that I, growing up, didn't have much humility at all. I always considered myself to be, I can do that without that person. I don't need that person to tell me what to do and blah, blah, blah. I don't need to take orders from that person. Well, actually, if you can swallow your pride, your ego to a certain extent and be humble, then actually that opens up so many more doors. It doesn't mean that you're being subservient or weak. It just means that actually you're opening your mind and saying, okay, I could learn something from this person. What can they teach me? They might not teach me everything. They might not be a better person than me necessarily, but in this situation, what can I learn from them and how can I move on? So he stresses how important humility is, and I think personal development in general, humility is really important. If you can be humble at work and open yourself up to learning from people rather than being arrogant and egotistical and thinking that you know best already, then that is hugely significant. He talks about teenagers as well, which is really important, and how aimlessness can really hurt teenagers. And I know when I think back to when I was younger, having no real aim, not really sure what you wanted to do, that is painful. You do feel bored, you do feel overwhelmed, unsure, scared that time's passing you by too quickly and you're not doing what you should be doing or what your friends are doing or what your parents want you to do. So having an aim. And Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, about just setting your sights on something, aiming for it. You might not necessarily achieve it straight away, but at least you're roughly going in some kind of direction. If you don't do that, you're not going in any direction at all. And you might change over time. You might veer off to the side, go somewhere else, but at least if you're heading in a direction, you're heading somewhere, you're developing and you're growing. So that's really important. Really important, we need to find the right struggles to aim for as well. So when I first started personal development, my first thought was kind of like, let's make loads of money, let's do this, let's do that. Quite superficial sort of things, which I think is common to a lot of people. And I think the more I've gone on with personal development, the more I've read, the more I've realised that it's more important to build deeper meaning in your life. And that might sound boring to those of you who are kind of new to this. But actually, I think if you can work on those deeper things, if you can work on yourself as a person, if you can become the sort of person who doesn't need a flash car or a yacht or excess amounts of money or what have you, then actually you can still achieve those things and kind of achieve financial freedom so that you can kind of be independent and take care of yourself and your family rather than being a flash git who just wants to show off and be egotistical. So if you can work on that stuff first, you're more likely to become the sort of person who brings value to society and is actually able to make more money anyway. So forget just trying to make money for the sake of it because you're superficial and foolish. Become wise first, learn how to become wise and think more deeply, and the chances are you'll make more money in the process as well. That's certainly been true for me and my business and my work, definitely. So there's the Einstein quote. I actually wrote it down. I don't normally do this when I'm doing these reviews, but I just felt this book needs a bit more detail in the review, so I have made a few notes. I normally just do it from memory. But so Einstein said, there is only one road to true human greatness, the road through suffering. I hope that is Einstein, by the way, because I know that I was listening to something earlier that was saying about Einstein being the most misquoted person on the internet or something. So like people sort of quote him for lots of different sayings that he didn't actually say. So I will check that. But I hope that's right. If not, I'll edit it in afterwards. So yeah, it's and the big sort of message he gives, which I find really important, is that resilience isn't just about bouncing back. Like I say, you hear resilience thrown around a lot in schools and stuff, and it's this idea that kids are strong enough to bounce back from difficulty and things. Well, actually, you can't necessarily bounce, but you can't bounce back from losing a parent, or a parent losing a child, or going to war and seeing your best friend blown up, or you can't bounce back from those things. You change as a person. You're not going to be the same person after you've experienced those things. But that's resilience. Is experiencing those things, learning from them, growing, developing, and continuing on with your aim to find meaning and purpose and to be a better person. That's resilience, not just bouncing back. Bouncing back suggests that it hasn't affected you and you're tough. If you bounce back in that way, then you're probably missing something in your mind. You're possibly a psycho, potentially, and so that isn't really resilience. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. We're brought up, he says, to believe that our heroes are kind of perfect beings who everyone likes and who are popular, and that leads children to believe that they need to be popular and liked by everyone. Actually, typical heroes in stories are flawed, and often they've got a dark side that they have to overcome to become better. And that's what children should be taught, is that actually we do have a good and a bad side. The best people are the ones who choose to control their bad side and do good things and be good people. So actually Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this as well. He says that it's no good being a rabbit stuck in the headlights who's useless and can't do any harm to anyone, is completely harmless. That just means that you're just incapable. You're just going to get walked on. You're far better off being someone who's a bit of a monster, but actually you choose to be virtuous and do the right things. So yeah, you're going to struggle to be resilient if you're just harmless and just, like I say, a rabbit stuck in the headlights, just not going to do any harm to anything or anyone. You're just walked on and taken advantage of. So we all have our dark side. It's those who choose to be good and do the right things who are the good people, I suppose, the heroes. He also mentions Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago, which I'm currently reading at the minute, which is about the gulags in Russia. And again, Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this, and it's just human suffering and human depravity and how horrendous human beings can be. So it's about that dark side as well that's within all of us. So that's really interesting to read. It's quite depressing at times, but it's definitely a good read in kind of understanding what human beings are capable of, really, in terms of what they can withstand and come through the other end, which is also Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He's also incredibly resilient. I won't go on too much about that, that's another review, but what people are capable of when they actually put their mind to it is absolutely astonishing. Going back to humility, which he talks about, I think this is his quote, he says, "As I grow in wisdom, humility becomes ever more my guide. I begin with humility, I act with humility, I end with humility." So I think, for him, if that is his quote, it's really important. And I think if you take that attitude to your life, to your work, then you are going to do a lot better. I think from personal experience, allowing your ego to get in the way, taking this attitude of, I don't need to learn from it, that idiot, that person's not better than me, I don't need to climb the ladder or do this or do that. Actually, and it might be easier for people in the military because it's very much set up. You're almost guaranteed if you do things the right way, then you will kind of progress to a certain extent, but that's harder for people maybe in the normal real world, possibly. But I think if you can be humble, then that makes a massive difference. And you see really successful people who at least act humbly anyway, even if they are a bit arrogant beneath the surface. They at least act humbly when they're out in public, a lot of them, if you watch them carefully. And I think that's really important. Okay, so also talks about work-life balance. It shouldn't be two separate things. It shouldn't be about work and life balancing together. If it's done correctly, he says something about it should work more like a carefully sort of put together symphony or an orchestra, rather than being this seesaw of one and the other. So life and work, that he sort of says, is your work should be so sort of meaningful that actually it becomes your life. And that doesn't mean that you're working the entire time, but it means that you're able to sort of integrate that into your family, into the fun, your rest and stuff as well, if that makes sense. I probably haven't explained that very well, but it shouldn't be basically these two extreme things. You work, which you absolutely hate, and then you've got your life, which is kind of what you enjoy. They should be more integrated and kind of work well together. So But yeah, I think that's about all I'm going to say really from the notes that I've put. It's a fantastic book. It's really easy to listen to, really easy to get through. It's pacey. The chapters have got good titles. It all makes sense. I can't recommend it enough. Eric Greitins' Resilience.